What's going on, everybody? Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy. And I do want to say to those of you who are Dallas Mavericks fans that I'm sorry. It is never fun, even though I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, to see your friends sports sad. It was a great run that the Mavs had. Obviously, the Boston Celtics, just an incredible team. The Mavs seem to have a very bright future, although Victor Wembanyama does exist. So we'll see, obviously, how difficult it is to get past him and the Spurs in over the course of the next 20 years. Who knows? But we're not here to talk about the NBA. We're here to talk about the NFL. It is the latest edition of our Dallas Cowboys roster breakdown series. I'm doing these videos in the lead up to training camp. So you want to make sure that you're subscribed here to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. You can see all my videos, everything I do. If you want to like the video, you want to turn on notifications, those things really help us. We are the most subscribed to individual team channel across all of the SB Nation universe. So I'm not trying to brag, but if you subscribe, you're a fan of number one. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa. On TikTok, rj.ochoa. If you want to send me an email, you can do that, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, or you can leave a comment down below, and I'll do my very best to get to those as well. That being said, it is once again the latest edition of our Dallas Cowboys roster breakdown series. I'm recording this on Tuesday, June 18th. It is 10:50 a.m. Central Standard Time. I always like to tell you because you never know. You just never know what news is going to happen. So obviously, if important news happens, I'll jump right back in here. I have an article available on whatever happens, have a video, have social stuff. You know that this is what I like to do, and I appreciate those of you who like to do it with me. Full disclosure, Bear is asleep under the desk. He is doing much better. Thank you to those of you who sent him well wishes. He's no longer wearing a cone. He's back to himself, which is great to see, isn't it, little buddy? All right. So today, wide receivers, which you know by the title and the cover of this video, we've already done, and I'll put links to them down below. We'll do this throughout all the videos that we continue to do. We've done the quarterback position, and we've done the backfield. We threw Hunter Lupke in, obviously, so we could do everybody. It wasn't just running backs. But we're doing wide receivers today. We'll do tight ends later on this week. Every Tuesday and Thursday is when these videos will drop, just so you are aware. And again, I will write about these subjects extensively at blogoftheboys.com, so make sure to check that out as well. All right, so Dallas Cowboys wide receivers. Let's take a look. Here are the players on the roster entering training camp, if that isn't obvious by the words on your screen. I've broken these down into ways that made sense in my mind. You got CeeDee Lamb, Brandin Cooks, Jaylen Tolbert, your starting wide receivers, and 11 personnel. Primary depth, no offense to anybody here. This was just the way that I saw it. These rosters, by the way, courtesy of the mothership, DallasCowboys.com, if you're wondering where they're sourced or whatever the case may be. Anyway, KaVontae Turpin, I really want to talk about him in a moment here. Jalen Brooks, obviously coming off his rookie season. Jalen Moreno-Cropper as well. Ryan Flournoy, the Cowboys rookie this year, obviously. And then we've got Corey Crooms, David Durden, last year's Prospect X, if you follow that series that Kalen Kaler does at The Athletic. Cam Johnson, Tyron Billy Johnson, and Racey McMath. The more category, no offense, is not one that we're going to spend a ton of time on. These are players who I think are fighting for practice squad spots. Obviously, we'll see a lot of them throughout the preseason, but if you have followed the Cowboys for some time, you know that they generally carry about 6 players on their ultimate final 53-man roster. And as you can see, we have 7 players listed between starters and primary depth, which makes for a potentially awkward sort of mathematical conversation. So we'll get to that point. But let's start off with CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 1, baller, pay the man, 88. I mean, whatever you want to say, you cannot say enough amazing things about CeeDee and what he has done, what he has offered for the Dallas Cowboys. And I have said this many, many, many different times, and I'm going to continue to say it in my advocation for the Cowboys to pay him and my explanation for how the Cowboys have dropped the ball, how they have bottled paying him this offseason. CeeDee is coming off of, you can read this on your screen, the greatest individual season that any wide receiver has ever had in franchise history. The greatest. Let's take a look at this. I'll get this off your screen here. 2023 for CeeDee Lamb. 17 games played, 181 targets, 135 receptions, led the NFL. That's what those bowl numbers mean over at Pro Football Reference. 1,749 yards. Now, he obviously played all 17 games. It's a longer regular season, but he set the Cowboys' individual season records in the 16th game of the year, the penultimate game of the regular season, that Saturday night game against the Detroit Lions that the Dallas Cowboys definitely won in all seriousness without any help from the officials at the very end. Yards per reception, 13 yards per reception. It's insane. 12 total touchdowns for CeeDee, 80 first downs achieved, that 92-yard reception, obviously, on that touchdown against the Lions coming in that game that we talked about here. It was incredible. I mean, and as you can see, everything for CeeDee, all the notable statistics have improved year over year over year over year. He's been in the NFL 4 seasons now. You look at it from a target standpoint, he's improved 111 to 120, 156, 181, reception 74 to 79, 107 to 135, yards 935 as a rookie. That was without Dak Prescott for most of his rookie season, obviously, by the way. And then 2021 was kind of that year we thought we were going to see a lot of CeeDee and Amari and Michael Gallup, and we didn't get a lot of them together, as a group on the field. It really stunk, but still 1,100 yards, then 1,359 in 2022. And then last year, he never really flirted with 2,000, obviously, and we'll call it 1,750 because it sounds cooler, but improve. And then from a touchdown standpoint as well, obviously he hasn't necessarily improved every year from a yards per reception standpoint, but there's context involved there. But anyway, touchdowns, 5 as a rookie, 6 in 21, 9 in 2022, an astonishing 12 touchdowns last year for CeeDee Lamb. I hope you had him on your fantasy team. I mean, and again, the first downs, 46, as a rookie, 54, 67, 80. And I will say it is incredibly unlikely that CeeDee will top last year. I think that's important to say out loud because it is very, very difficult. And I, think that that's just the way math works and the way that, gravity works, right? And the way regression to the mean works. I talked about this a lot. Speaking of that 2021 season, I said, and everybody said, there's just no way Trayvon Diggs is going to have this many interceptions again, right? And that proved to be true. Generally, there's regression to the mean. And while CeeDee has improved in all of the important statistics year over year over year over year, that's now 4 years in a row. How do you improve upon 181 targets, 135 receptions, 1,749 yards, 12 receiving touchdowns? It's just people talk about this a lot in back to the NBA, when these super teams, would form, right? The like most common take when it's a weird example, but when Kevin Durant joined the Warriors was like, well, there's only one ball, like, right? Like how's KD going to eat? How's Clay and Steph and Draymond? Like, how's it all going to happen? There's only so much to go around. And in a similar sense, it's very difficult to improve upon those numbers because there's only so much you can do and achieve in a single NFL season. And so that's why I don't doubt that CeeDee has the capability or the potential to do these sorts of things. It's just, you're already near the ceiling, and he might be, he could have 120 receptions next year for 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns, and that would be regression in all of the major statistical categories. Would that be a failure? No. It's just, it exemplifies how close to the sun he flew throughout this 2023 season, which is why it was a real shame, obviously, that the Cowboys couldn't do anything serious in the playoffs. But he was an all-pro. He's a Pro Bowler. I mean, he's amazing. He is, if there were ever a person worth paying, it is CeeDee Lamb. He exemplifies anything and everything awesome. He has done everything the exact total right way for the team. And again, if I were advising him, if CeeDee were my friend, if he asked for my opinion, he said, what should I do? I would tell him what I just said. I would say, the odds are, not that I don't believe you or believe in you, the odds are that you're not going to be able to improve upon that season. So you should not step foot on the field until you have a new deal in hand. And so I think that's why we're seeing what we are from him. Now, the biggest question, obviously, is whether or not he's going to report to training camp. It would stand to reason that without a new deal, he won't. We've seen that, work effectively for many different players on the Cowboys, and he obviously didn't show up to the voluntary things or the mandatory minicamp. The story on CeeDee kind of is what it is. Right now, it's just a contract and whether or not it's ultimately going to get done. I think that we all think it's going to get done. It's just whether or not the Cowboys are going to do it soon or whatever the case may be. But CeeDee is amazing. He is one of the very best wide receivers in the NFL. I don't know that I would argue that he is the best. I had a tweet about this that went a little bit, was taken a little bit out of context when Justin Jefferson got paid. I think there's an argument to be made that he will be paid more than Justin Jefferson. You can certainly argue that the laws of supply and demand will suggest that happens. Whether he's a better player than him, actually, obviously, is not as much up for debate. But again, supply and demand is a very different thing. And CeeDee has a lot of leverage, a lot of negotiating power working in his favor. The only thing he doesn't have that his teammate Dak Prescott has is that, unlike Dak, he will not be a true free agent next year. The Cowboys can still use the franchise tag on him once, twice over if they really, really, really want to, if things ultimately get to that point. We know the Cowboys love the franchise tag, and I would be lying to you if I told you I wasn't worried that they might not be leaning on that, thinking that they have that in their back pocket. I hope that doesn't ultimately come to be the case. What would really suck, I guess, last thing to say on CeeDee before we move on to Brandin Cooks, what would really suck is if he's absent all of training camp. Zach Martin had a quote throughout mandatory minicamp. You can watch this on the Dallas Cowboys YouTube channel, where he talked about missing last year. And there was an article in the Dallas Morning News about this as well, and how it took a little bit of time because he missed training camp to kind of really find his rhythm. I don't think that we should make big deals about when players miss training camp, but it isn't a zero sort of thing, right? So I would hate, and I think you would hate, so we would all hate CeeDee to miss any time at training camp. So hopefully this gets done much sooner rather than later. Okay, so making sure right now, I always have Twitter open to make sure nothing happens here. The Dallas Cowboys training camp dates have been announced, just so you're aware. They officially start training camp on July 24th. That is when rookies and veterans both report. Okay, so that just came out right now. Awesome. Congratulations to all of us. Let's move on now to Brandin Cooks. Brandin Cooks is a very fine wide receiver too. I think that a lot of people maybe we had too lofty of expectations of Brandin Cooks in 2023. I'm gonna say 24. I was very confused because of the July 24th thing. So the number 24 is very prominent in my mind. Maybe we had too lofty of expectations, because as we can take a look at Brandin Cooks' statistical production over the course of his career, the thing we made the most noise about, right? The thing we talked a lot about was his 1,000-yard seasons, how he had 1,000 yards everywhere he went, right? He had 1,000 yards in New Orleans, he had 1,000 yards in New England, he had 1,000 yards with the Rams, he had 1,000 yards with Houston. I think what we conveniently ignored, and I say this not to say that Brandin Cooks is not good, because I do think he's productive, and I want to get to something in a moment here. But what we conveniently ignored was his 2022 season with Houston. I think we just assigned that to, at the time, the Texans not being very good, all those sorts of things. But I mean, the numbers are kind of right there. He had 93 targets in 2022 and 57 receptions, one shy of 700 receiving yards, and only 3 touchdowns. Now, that being said, I think expecting 1,000 yards was maybe, I don't want to call it foolish, but I think we were looking for the wrong things. Now, what I don't think any of us could have forecasted, let me zoom out here and go to his 2023 season for you, was the touchdowns. Actually, before we do that, let's take a look right here. Sorry, I don't mean to be moving you around a billion different ways. All right. He didn't have 1,000 yards, and I will fully tell you that, that's a little bit disappointing, but he had 8 touchdowns. And I don't think that we have made a big enough deal about that. CeeDee had 12, right? And I just said a moment ago that if CeeDee had 9 touchdowns, we'd consider that a very good season. I don't think we're giving enough credit to the fact that Brandin Cooks had 8 touchdowns. And we'll get there specifically. That's where I was a moment ago. But look at his touchdown numbers by year. All right. I mean, he's been in the NFL a very long time. He did have 6 in his first 2 seasons each with the Texans, but before that, he'd really struggled to kind of hit that. I mean, the last time he had at least 8 touchdowns in a year was 2016. That was still Drew Brees operating at a high level before he really fell off. I mean, he has not necessarily been, a red zone kind of guy. He's not been necessarily somebody who found the end zone a lot. Now, that being said, it did take a while, if you recall last year. That's what I wanted to look at right here. So let's look at this is Brandin Cooks' 2023 season with the Cowboys. As you can see, let me jump over to my other tab. Okay, I got you. All right. No touchdown. He was inactive at game against the Jets. I wrote something at the time about Jaylen Tolbert, which we're going to get to in a moment here. No touchdown, no touchdown, no touchdown. And then he kind of caught fire. So we're talking about 8 touchdowns in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games. 8 touchdowns in 12 different games. I never had more than one, obviously, in a single game. But, I mean, who cares? Like, 8 touchdowns in 12 games. 8 touchdowns in 12 games. And again, the first 4 games matter. I'm not trying to just, cherry pick and prove my point. But I don't think we're giving him enough credit. I really don't. I mean, he turned into a weapon for Dak Prescott. They really kind of found their comfort level, I think. Even if you look at this catch percentage, I mean, this was really bad, obviously, and it was kind of a slow burn. But then they just really found their footing together. I mean, this was some serious heat as the season ended. I know the Cowboys lost this game in Miami on Christmas Eve, and that was frustrating. But he was really important. And so I am hesitantly, cautiously optimistic, confident. I think that we're saying that as this like demerit against Brandin Cooks. I don't think that we're properly again, I'm not saying we should be hyping this dude up and gassing him up, but I don't think that we're giving Brandin Cooks enough credit for being a proper wingman for CeeDee Lamb. He is absolutely the appropriate Robin to CeeDee's Batman, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I do think that his relationship with Dak Prescott really matters. I do think that he has found his home, and Dak has kind of found him. We know that Dak Prescott, once he establishes chemistry and a rapport with different pass catchers, a lot of them are tight ends that we've seen in the past, that he will go to them. He will trust them. He knows. And I think that we saw that connection kind of flourish over the course of the second half, really the final 2/3 of the season last year. So I'm very, very excited for Brandin Cooks in 2024. Again, I don't know that you could really kind of ask for, I know that we were really dissatisfied with the way the Cowboys went about their offseason. I would not have advocated for a move here. I think that the Cowboys have been fairly set with CeeDee Lamb and Brandin Cooks at 1 and 2. But there's a bit of a question here at wide receiver 3. And Jaylen Tolbert's wearing number 18 here. He obviously has throughout the course of his career. In case you didn't know, he switched to number 1. Ryan Flournoy, the rookie, is wearing number 18. You'll see him in a photo wearing that in a moment, just in case you're curious. But this is obviously a photo of Jaylen from last year. It's not a secret that Jaylen Tolbert has been disappointing. He's a former third-round pick. We were very excited about him 2 years ago, and he's obviously been on the team throughout, a really tumultuous era at the wide receiver position. That 2022 year was the first season in which the Cowboys were playing without Amari Cooper. Obviously, they traded him away right before the draft. And you come in as a top 100 pick, as a third-round, selection, and a lot of people, myself included, expect you to kind of just thrive and hit the ground running right away. Excuse me. And that didn't happen. And he had the false start, or offsides penalty in Green Bay as a rookie, and he was inactive, and it just kind of felt like it wasn't working. And I definitely think you have to put some of the, the weight of the blame on Jaylen Tolbert specifically, because, I mean, he's the person involved here. But I definitely think it's fair to say that the Cowboys placed too much of an expectation on him throughout his rookie season. Okay, so then they went and traded for Brandin Cooks, and the status quo kind of changed around Jaylen, and that was nice to see. And I do think we saw a lot of growth throughout his second season in the NFL. And to be fair, I mean, there was kind of really only room to grow based on what happened throughout his rookie year. But that being said, I do think that we saw a player kind of understanding what happens at the NFL level. Now, for those of you who are newer fans or younger fans or whatever the case may be, we did not used to always live in a world where the NFL had wide receivers enter from college and dominate right away. That this is a sort of still a newer phenomenon-ish. For a long time, it took until a player's third season. That was always, it was an article I would write at the time. It was the third year for different dudes, different players. They really kind of hit throughout that third year. Des Bryant really took off that 2012 season. It was just kind of it took 2 years to kind of figure out the NFL. And so I think there's hope, conventional hope, if you want to call it that's going to happen with Tolbert, that his rookie season is going to be, his third season is going to be one where it all kind of comes together. But there's no question that the Cowboys are relying on him this year. And that's what concerns me. This is similar to his rookie season in 2022. And they're relying on him at wide receiver 3. And I don't feel great about this wide receiver 3 spot. But what I don't feel great about in a general sense, in a macro sense, is that I don't feel great about anything beyond that, right? Okay, cool. I can talk myself into CeeDee Lamb, Brandin Cooks, and Jaylen Tolbert. Great. What happens if somebody pulls a hamstring, or if, Brandin Cooks missed week 2 last year against the Jets? What happens at that moment in time? Who's next on the team? Like, who is the next person to step up? Who are you playing in 11 personnel? Here's the look at the group again, just in case you forgot. If one of those 3, the starters, has to miss a game, who are you putting in? I don't mean to speak, in a poor way about anybody else, but I don't feel great about anybody else from an offensive standpoint. I have, interest in Jalen Brooks and Jalen Cropper and certainly Ryan Flournoy, but I don't know that I really have faith in KaVontae Turpin as an offensive player. And that takes me to the next thing I wanted to get to. I told you at the beginning that I wanted to talk about KaVontae. We saw him get involved in the offense last year to a slight degree. And I would be remiss if I didn't remind you of the conversation he had with Tony Catalina and Aiden Davis on the First and 10 podcast when we had a podcast network. Still working on that, by the way, before the Super Bowl last year, the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl. And KaVontae said this was coming off his rookie year that he wanted to I'm paraphrasing, but he wanted to force the Cowboys to use him on offense. He wanted to make sure that that happened, et cetera, et cetera. It was an awesome interview. And we referenced it a lot because it was important information, obviously. So that kind of did happen. As you look at the offensive numbers for KaVontae relative, to his rookie season in 2022. In 2022, he had 3 rushing attempts for 17 yards versus 11 his second season in 2023. He had 110 yards. He had that touchdown that was week 1. That was the opener on the road against the Giants. Remember that photo of Tyron? It was awesome. From a receiving standpoint, though, he had 1 reception his rookie year, and he had 12 obviously this past season. We're not talking about massive numbers, but 12 receptions, 127 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns through the air. One of them obviously came on Thanksgiving Day when he went and Dak and they got the turkey leg. It was super awesome. So we saw growth, and we attributed it, I think, in part to Mike McCarthy being the offensive play caller and obviously finding a way to use him. And I maintain that I think Mike deserves credit for that. But I don't know if he is the answer at wide receiver 4. I don't know if I feel like he's the guy that is the next step up. I'm curious to find that out. Maybe he is sort of by default. I think he kind of has to be right now because I have so many questions, or I have less answers is a better way to put it, about everybody else. But beyond that, say that he doesn't, factor or figure into the offensive conversation all too much. I've kind of just said this in discussions so far. We do not know. We have no idea what the new kickoff is going to be like. I know we have a general idea, but we've obviously seen it in the XFL, but we don't know what skill sets are valuable here. This is a new thing. So just because, and I don't say this, in a light fashion, but just because KaVontae is very fast doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be as dynamic of a returner in our new world as he was in our old world. We don't know if that is the primary skill, the best skill to have in this world. So that being said, what if he is not somebody? That is the mail truck coming by. So we're going to make it through because we're already 21 minutes in, Bear. We can do this. I told you he was feeling better. Bear, we're 21 minutes in. We're not going to scrap this. You can do this. Anyway, what if KaVontae Turpin is not a returner to a high degree? That is a place, because we looked at it. There were 7 names. We're going to make it through this video. I should have closed the office and kept you out. The mail truck is whizzing by, and all is good. I told you, everything is fine. All right, we can do this. Anyway, I just don't know. If we look at the 7 names again, and I put this back up on the screen, if KaVontae's not offering you a ton on offense, and if he's not a valuable player on special teams like he has been in the past, I do wonder if that's a spot the Cowboys look to create a roster spot from, because Ryan Flournoy is making the roster. He's a rookie. I know he's a late round pick, but generally speaking, history suggests, Jalen Brooks is an example, a recent example, that those players find a way to make the Dallas Cowboys roster. So that is a question I really have. What is going to happen at wide receiver 3, KaVontae Turpin, if he's in the conversation in that mix? Because if Jaylen Tolbert disappoints, is KaVontae Turpin your next option, right? Is he your next guy? The Cowboys are fortunate that CeeDee Lamb and Brandin Cooks can kind of float in and outside, but who's that other guy? Who's that other player that you feel confident can do those sorts of things? I don't know that I know the answer to that in earnest, but those are our top 4 options. Let's get to number 5 on our list, Jaylen Brooks. We saw him sparingly last year, and I think that was exciting to kind of see what he could offer the team. I think he has a safe spot on this roster. I think he has a safe spot, obviously, throughout cutdowns and things like that. I think he's going to get an opportunity to become that 4th guy, that next man up in an event of an emergency or whatever the case may be. That's what you want to see. You want to see that growth. You want to see that development from year 1 to year 2. He's an incredible story. 7th round pick, obviously, and somebody who can kind of be relied upon at this point in time. I'm very interested to see him, but I'm most interested to see, what Ryan Flournoy obviously has to offer. A very talented athlete, high athleticism traits, and that was why in the video I did when the Cowboys drafted him, I mentioned that we had that new return world, and maybe he was somebody whose skill set would translate there, which could also spell the end of somebody like KaVontae Turpin or whatever the case may be. By the way, we're not including Deuce Vaughn in this conversation, even though he was working out of the slot throughout the mandatory minicamp. But Ryan Flournoy, in my mind, is going to have every opportunity to earn, establish, take a roster spot. Again, he's a draft pick. He's a rookie. And so that works in his benefit and works against other players, obviously. We've seen that that's the way NFL roster construction tends to go. he is somebody who offers another option, but to rely on him significantly, I think would be a mistake throughout his rookie season. We've learned that in the past many different times over. It's not often that you have a 5th-round rookie show up and improve and do something special, regardless of position, like Deron Bland. But Ryan Flournoy is somebody who I think, I don't want to say could surprise or may surprise, but somebody who we're all hopeful about. He's going to be a popular pet cat choice of many, obviously, throughout the course of training camp. But all told, this is the group. This is what the Cowboys have going on. And again, I mean, your top 3 are obviously safe, and then there's 3 coming from that next group of 4. Is KaVontae Turpin the odd man out? Is Jalen Cropper the odd man out? Probably Jalen Cropper, obviously. But he was impressive, if you recall, last year, obviously, throughout the training camp process. And somebody's going to earn a role, or somebody has a chance to earn a role. That's the wide receiver group is always the most fun to kind of watch throughout training camp, because somebody comes along and impresses in a way and makes it impossible to build the roster without them. And who will that person be in 2024? It might be Jalen Moreno Cropper. It might be, who knows, David Durden or Cam Johnson or Tyron Billy Johnson. You just never truly know at this position who will be the Dennis Houston that Dak Prescott kind of likes and shows favor to and has as a bit of a favorite target. We will have those questions answered over the course of the next 2 months, and that is very exciting. Up next year, we have our tight ends coming on Thursday in our Dallas Cowboys roster breakdown series. We're evaluating the entire roster of the Dallas Cowboys in the lead of a training camp, obviously, once the team gets there in Oxnard, California, which we found out right now throughout this video will be on July 24th, both rookies and veterans. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing here to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. I talk about the Dallas Cowboys all the time. Like the video, turn on notifications, all those things make me very happy. Who am I? Who is me? I'm RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. You can send me an email if you would like, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, or comment in the video down below where the description for everything else will be, and I'll do my very best to get to those as well. I'm going to try to get out of here before the mail truck comes back around and Bear freaks out. Once again, thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. This was a ton of fun. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope you have something delicious for lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever the case may be. And I can't wait to hang out with you once again on Thursday when we're talking Dallas Cowboys tight ends. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. See you next time.